Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have, I don't, we're going to ask him. I think he said the most featured cop on the TV show Cops. And he's done so many other things. This dude is amazing. His name is Lieutenant Randy Sutton, retired from the Las Vegas Police Department. And this guy's got so many cool things happening. So do me a favor right now, share this out, share it out to all of your friends and family. This is going to be a great episode. Stay with us. I'll be right back with Randy Sutton. All right, let me bring Randy on. Randy, welcome to the show.
Ken, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's an honor to have you here. And before we get started, I want to say thank you for your service.
I appreciate that.
I think it's very important that people, number one, respect law enforcement, and number two, always be grateful for their service.
There's something we can agree on right off the bat.
Right. Yeah. So Randy, this show's about helping people get unstuck in life. And, I think a lot of people have life happen and they get stuck and they don't know what to do. And so that's what this is about. So start with telling everybody where you were born and raised.
Okay. Before I even do that, I want to talk about what you just said about people getting stuck. This is such an important topic to me personally as well, because of what I do now, which is run a nationwide charitable organization called the Wounded Blue, police officers who've been injured and disabled in the line of duty. And you talk about getting stuck. We're going to talk about that a lot more, but I really appreciate the topic of your show and how important it is for people to listen to. So let's go back into ancient history and talk about my growing up. I was born in a little town called Princeton, New Jersey, where the university is. And
Wow.
it was a beautiful little town to grow up in. It was actually I had what would probably be an idyllic life when growing up. I literally lived the nuclear family dream of mom and dad who cared for me and supported me, and an education in a great school system. But I had a problem, and that was I was very, very sickly as a child. I spent much of my young years, when I was 9, 10, 11, in and out of hospitals. And what was happening was I was literally almost bedridden much of the time. And they never could figure out what was wrong with me. But I literally didn't have the energy to get out of bed. I would be horribly depressed. I couldn't go out and play sports with the other kids. I can't remember the number of times I sat on the front stoop or looked out my bedroom window at the kids playing, wishing I could play with them, and I couldn't. I wasn't physically able to do it. And of course, my parents were they didn't know what to do. I spent over a month in the Philadelphia Children's Hospital undergoing every test that you could ever imagine. And
they couldn't figure out what it was?
They couldn't figure out what it was. And so out of desperation, my parents had a friend who had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and they went to an alternative doctor. And this is in the days when alternative doctors were, they were treated like witch doctors if you didn't follow, the medical system as it existed. And but this alternative doctor, who was a homeopath, literally saved the life of my parents' friend, and so out of desperation, they made an appointment with this doctor to see me. Now, talk about eccentric. The doctor was in Trenton, New Jersey. It was about an hour away from where we lived, and he only had office hours from 12 midnight till 4 in the morning.
What?
So that's about as alternative as they get, right? That was his
Did you
peak
have
time.
to go down a dark alley and enter through a back door? And
well, Trenton, New Jersey is not exactly the Waldorf Astoria, I can tell you that. So I remember, when my parents wake me up at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, "Come on, we're going to the doctor." And even as an 11-year-old, I knew that that I was in trouble. That I got to be really sick if my parents were taking me to the doctor at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we knock on the door of this brownstone house, and this little old man, this little bird-like old man, opens the door and ushers us in. Dr. Samuel Getlin was his name, and he was ancient. He was literally ancient, and he ushered us in. Now, remember, I'd been to the Philadelphia Children's Hospital, the most modern medical facility that existed back then, and I'm used to that kind of atmosphere. So this little old man ushered us into his cluttered little office, takes me into his exam room, takes a urine sample and a blood sample, and then sends us into his waiting room to wait for him. He says, "I'm going back to my lab," right? His lab. So I'm sitting in his cluttered little waiting room with stacks of National Geographics 3 feet high, and I look at his medical degree. It's on the wall, and he graduated from medical school in the 20s, right? So,
oh wow.
I know. And my parents are looking at each other like, "What are we doing here? This is crazy." And then he comes out and he ushers us into his exam room. Now, usually they ask me what the symptoms were, right?
Yeah.
I didn't say a word. He told me all of my symptoms. He said, you have no energy whatsoever. He says you get fat and then you get skinny, and then you're depressed, and he laid it all out. And I'm going, yeah. And my parents are looking at him like, "Wow, how do you know all this?" And he turned to my parents, and then he told me what I ate. He says, "You eat cheeseburgers, you eat ice cream, you do this, you do that." And I'm going, yeah. He turned to my parents. He says, "Your son is starving to death." And we all looked at him like, what? He says, your son is nutritionally deficient in every category. He's literally starving to death from hypoglycemia, which is just the opposite of diabetes. And he said that because he is so starved for nutrients, his body cannot function. And he literally changed my life that night. I had to take 72 vitamins a day for years.
72?
72. And then my diet, no sugar, no white flour, no this, no that, no. I mean, the man was so far ahead of his time understanding nutrition, and it literally changed my metabolism, and I became healthy. And it's all because of a little old nutritionist doctor who knew a whole lot more than anybody else about how to save a life of someone who was nutritionally deficient. It was life altering for me, literally life altering.
I mean, right? It would, I guess, going from not being able to go outside and play to that is insane, man. And wow, it's amazing to me because I know I love naturopath stuff. I love that. I've had a lot of the naturopath doctors on the show, and I love what you're talking about here. Did you continue like up to this day? Are you like very aware of what you're putting into your body as far as nutrition?
I am. And I'm not going to say I certainly am not strict like I was in those days, because my
Sure.
metabolism, evened out. So I can do the cheating every now and then, but I am very
Yeah.
aware of
Wow.
my eating issues and
Yeah.
remaining healthy. And it's something that I'm not hesitant to talk about, because I am such a huge believer. But that set me on the course of my life that continues to this day. So I become healthy over a couple of years, and
Wow.
my life changed, and I was able
Yeah.
to start getting into good physical shape,
Right.
and but also, here's the other part of how you talk about your life getting stuck, right? I was stuck in bed for years, and I wasn't all the time. I went to school, I did, but I had it was a challenge,
Yeah.
and from that, my um, my existence really revolved around my reading. And I read ferociously. I mean, I read books, I read magazines. It was everything, and it was an entirely different way for me to grow up. But because of my reading, when I was in those formative years, I became a writer later on, not trained in anything, but simply because I had consumed so many
Yep.
books that it wound up to be a natural path for me. Forgive the pun, natural path,
Yeah.
but
I
you
know.
know.
I almost
so
went, but I'm pumped.
so
Wow.
I go through my formative years, and while I was in high school, now I always knew what I was going to be. I always knew that I was going to become a police officer. That was, to me, because being a protector was always so important to me,
Wait,
and it kind
wait,
of
wait.
runs in my.
Stop. That was actually my next question. So you knew as a child that you wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah, and I consider myself lucky, because I always had the direction, and so I pointed my life in that direction, and I didn't do anything to screw myself up from becoming a cop. Right?
Wow.
always a decent citizen. I
Yeah.
believed but I did believe in protecting others. My grandfather was a deputy who was shot in the line of duty, and he survived. But I remember being mesmerized by that massive scar in his stomach where he got hit with a shotgun blast from a poacher, of all things. And my
Good Lord.
parents were both court reporters, so I grew up listening to the cases, and so
Yeah.
anyway, I was always kind of intrigued by that. And then, in the weird way that the world works, I was in high school, and I was a junior in high school, and Princeton was a very, very liberal high school, even back in the 70s when I was there.
Yeah.
And there were some bullies that really ran roughshod over the school, and I ran afoul of them on several occasions. And every time I did, I would wind up in a fight, and I would wind up getting thrown out of school. So about the fourth or fifth time, I'm in the principal's office, and they called my mother because she had to come pick me up again. And the principal and I actually got along very well. He knew that every time I was in a fight, it was because of the protectionism that I had absorbed, right?
Yep.
So he actually had respect for me, even though they had the no tolerance. You get in a fight, you get suspended. So one afternoon, I'm in his office, and the Princeton Police Department, very small department, 32 cops, but each year they would bring a cadet in, and that cadet was chosen from being a junior in high school. So I happened
Wow.
to be in his office when he happened to be talking to the chief of police about recommending a new cadet for that year. And I heard the conversation, and I was doing this. Hey, me, choose me.
Yeah. And you were
And
a
the principal
junior?
got this funny look on his face, and he said to the chief, "Chief, I think I have the perfect candidate for you." And that's
Wow.
how I got hired as a cadet with the Princeton Police Department,
But
which,
you were a junior in high school, you said?
yes.
Okay. Wow.
And
Wow,
that's,
man.
and the cadet was really basically a gopher, you know,
Yeah.
but you got to learn a little bit about what goes into policing.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. I knew it was my path. And once again, fate played an incredible role. So, because I was getting thrown out of school all the time, I decided to take extra course credits and graduate early. So I did. I graduated early. I turned
Wow.
18, and just that year, the state of New Jersey changed the age of majority from 21 to 18, which meant that you could drink, you could vote, and you could also become a cop. They didn't think that one out very, very much at 18, right?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and then because I graduated early, I had all of you had to have a high school, degree or high school, you had to graduate.
Yeah.
So when the police test came up, I took the police test. Now, generally speaking, they only hired one cop every 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And there was one opening, and they knew they weren't going to hire me at 18 years old, but they wanted to keep me interested. So I wound up number 2 on the list. Now, I want you to know about 800 people took this police test, and I wound up number 2.
Wow.
But they had no intention of hiring me. But
And
then
this is with Princeton.
this is with Princeton.
Okay.
So in the weird way that the world works, however, I continued working for the department as an unpaid cadet, even though they whenever they needed somebody to fill in, like work at the desk, answer the
Yeah.
phone, something like that, they would call me and I'd come in. And then meanwhile, I'm going to college. I've got a full-time job, and one of the guys that I worked with from the time I was a cadet was a fellow named Johnny. Johnny was this crusty old Navy veteran who was towards the end of his career. He had like 3 or 4 more years to go. And but he was one of these guys who was really rough on the outside, but really kind on the inside.
Yeah.
So we always, and I worked with him a lot because he was a permanent desk officer. So one day there's a hurricane happening, and it's a real hurricane. So I knew the department was going to need help. So I went in to help and to work the desk, and the next shift was supposed to come on at 3:00, and Johnny was one of those people that was supposed to be there, and he didn't show up. And so we figured, we called his house, and she said, his wife said that he left to get to work. And we figured, okay, well, maybe because of the storm, he got stuck somewhere. So that we're just continuing to work. And I went down to use the locker room, and I opened the door, and there's John on the floor. He came in and had a heart attack.
Oh.
And I wound up doing CPR on him, trying to save his life. And I couldn't.
Wow.
And
wow.
As we're dealing with that, one of the cops walks up to me and says, "I know this isn't the way you didn't want it, but you're now a cop."
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were what? How old were you at that point?
19.
Holy crap. So you because of a sudden opening on the force, wow, man. So let me ask you.
Don't think that hasn't that's played a role in my brain ever since.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure.
But the fates work in very, very strange ways. And so I spent 10 years as a cop there, and I was a detective.
Did you finish college?
I never finished college.
Okay.
I took a bunch of college courses, but I never got a degree.
Right.
And and you know what? I don't think it ever affected me one way or the other, not having a degree.
I don't have one.
I learned my life on the streets, And Princeton was a great place. However, small town, college town, I wanted action. I was bored. And I should have
Right.
left much earlier because I was almost halfway to retirement when I finally made the decision I got to get out of here. And I
Wow.
researched different departments and heard great things about the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Came out to Las Vegas, took the police test, was immediately given the opportunity to come to work for them, and changed my life. I mean, literally, it was very difficult leaving my family, going to a city where I would have to start all over. I'd have to go through the
Yeah.
academy again, have to go
Oh,
through the
wow.
entire process again. So you got to swallow your pride and suck it up and know what your goal is. And I spent 24 years as a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officer, retiring as a lieutenant. And the story of my retirement is probably the most important of the topics of where I am now.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to get to that because you're right. It's a very it's a big segue into where you are now. But talk about, because now when you started with Las Vegas, and I lived there for 13 months in a gated community with armed guards, and I remember thinking, is it really that bad that we have to have armed guards? This looks like a nice area, but it's that bad. It is that bad. Um, so talk about, where did you start as were you a beat cop, and what were you what did you
Yeah,
do when you first got
I
there?
literally had to start all over at the very beginning. So I
Wow.
had to go, through the academy again, and then you spend
Wow.
6 months in field training with a field training officer, and you literally get evaluated every single day. I mean, it's there's a lot of pressure,
I'm
and
sure.
if you didn't cut it, you were gone. You were gone,
Yeah.
and I had no place to go. I had cut all my ties, right? I
Yep.
couldn't go back to Princeton. So let's say I was highly motivated to succeed,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it was. But talk about an eye-opening experience. The old adage, "Be careful what you wish for." So
Yep.
I was still on probation before I was in my first shooting, and it was a 15-year-old kid tried to kill me,
Oh my
and
God.
it was we were chasing. It was graveyard shift, and I was in a gang infested area. It was a stolen
Wow.
car. We got in pursuit. The car crashes. A bunch of the 3 or 4 of the gangbangers jump out. I'm chasing the driver, and we're in a housing area, and low income housing, and I just can't quite catch him. I'm on his butt, but he's 15 years old. I later came to find out,
Right.
and he's fast as the wind. I'm not, and as I'm
Right.
running behind him, he goes around the corner of a building, and I've got my gun in my hand.
Yeah.
And when I come around the corner of the building, he's waiting for me.
Oh.
He's turned towards me, and he's got the gun pointed right at me. He was
Oh my
waiting to
God.
ambush me. And instantaneously, I fired a round at him, and he was right next to the wall, the outside wall of the house. Well, my bullet missed his head by about half an inch. But
Wow.
what happened was when I hit the stucco wall behind him, a piece of the stucco hit him in the head, and he thought he was shot.
Oh my
And he
God.
threw the gun down, and I took him into custody. That's when I found
Oh
out he was
my.
15.
Holy
So
crap, dude. Wow.
I know. So you're
Wow.
not in Kansas anymore, Toto. And
Yeah. Well, I was just getting ready to say Las Vegas is such a boring place. Like there can't be a whole lot of action there. I'm kidding. Like
oh yeah,
that's
it was nonstop throughout my career.
I cannot imagine. I remember the last time I was there, it was they had just legalized marijuana. I'm like, what? And my wife and I are walking down the boulevard and the strip, and we've got our young little daughters that are with us, and I'm like, everybody's high now. What the hell's going on here? It's crazy. So
Well, it's still like that. There's a haze of pot smoke basically over the entire strip. Yeah.
That just blows my mind. I've done a lot of work in technology for narcotics officers, and it just blows my blows my mind. But anyway, well, that's a whole nother episode. Talk about, was there anything during your career? Did you ever get into like becoming a detective? Did you do any of that kind of work at all, or?
Yeah, I had a very wide, varied career. I did well. I was a patrol officer. Then I became a field training officer. And
Wow.
field training officers are the unsung heroes of the police profession. You never hear about them, but they're vital because they are the ones that actually take a raw recruit and mold them into being a real cop. And so I really relished that role. In fact, my entire rest of my career almost that I spent in patrol division was in some way, shape, or form involved with the field training program. So I know how valuable it was. So I was a field training officer, and then I became a narcotics detective.
Oh, wow.
But I had a checkered tenure as a narcotics detective, because in when I was still a patrol officer, I was featured on the TV show Cops. Yeah. That was the first year that I was on the TV show, and they got a ton of shows with me. And that was the most popular. Vegas venue was the most popular on the TV show Cops, because we had such cool stuff going on, right? So then I become a detective, an undercover detective.
Wow.
Right? So I can tell you, this is a funny story. So we're following a narcotics dealer, and he was a fairly substantial dope dealer, and we're at one of the hotels, and I'm dressed. I even got a beard now. I'm dressed in like an undercover, and we're on a surveillance. We're a 5-person team. So we're, very careful about making sure that, we pass each other off, so that he doesn't make us as here's this guy that's been following me all this time. But we're walking through the pool area, and suddenly one of the people at the pool area says, "Hey, it's Randy Sutton from Cops."
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Dude. Wow.
And from that moment on, I was known as Backdraft, because I got burned so bad.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. So they probably didn't want you working a lot of undercover stuff.
And every now and then I would actually do some of the narcotics buys from the dope dealers. And one time I'm in a bad guy's house, and this is very, very hairy. Narcotics officers who do undercover work have huge cojones, I got to tell you.
Yeah.
And I'm in this guy's apartment. There's one of his they're gangbangers, and there's a couple other gangbangers doing security. My backup team is in surveillance vehicles around the parking lot, and they've got actual surveillance people on foot doing counter surveillance. So this is and I'm all by myself, right? And I got a gun
carrying?
on me. What's that?
You do have a gun on you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I'm there trying to make a buy.
Right.
And one of the guys there says, "Man," he says, "you look familiar to me." And I'm thinking, "Oh no, don't tell me he's going to put this together." Right? And the whole time he's saying, he says, "You look so familiar to me. Where have I seen you?" And I said, I got one of those faces, man. I was sweating it. I was sweating it.
Oh my
And they
God.
actually sold me the dope, and I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there.
And
So I
and
did.
all of a sudden you hear the theme song from Cops start
Yeah,
playing.
exactly right.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
did that. Then I became and right from there, I was promoted to sergeant. And that I stayed, I was a sergeant for almost 14 years. That
Oh
was the best,
wow.
that to me, that was the best position on the police department. You got
Yeah.
to actually be a leader. You got to take young police officers and mold them into the future, into
Yeah.
what they could be. And you played a huge role in their lives. And I did that for 14 years. Then became I was I wound up becoming promoted to the head of the advanced training division, and then from there promoted to the rank of lieutenant. And I went back to patrol, which is my first love, and spent the rest of my career as a graveyard lieutenant in the patrol division at my
Wow.
choosing, because in Vegas, where's the action?
Graveyard.
In graveyard, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I spent the remainder of my career until the fateful night that changed everything for me.
So now when and that was you retired what year? What year was it that you were
2010.
2010?
So I had
So that was
24 years.
well,
I had 24 years on the Las Vegas Police Department.
wow, man, that's incredible. That's so incredible. And for those that have never been to Vegas who are watching, like you don't even know like that's like unbelievable because there's always like it's hard to walk down the strip without seeing something absolutely insane that's probably illegal in some way, like in right in front of cops. I've seen it happen like right in front of, you know, so yeah, it's crazy, man. So talk about the fateful night that everything changed and you were yeah, you became retired after that.
Well, I want to mention that during I wasn't only a cop during all this time. So I had been
Oh,
featured on 3 seasons of the TV show Cops. And I was the
right.
most featured officer on the show, including when I was a sergeant.
Wow.
And one day, I get a phone call from a casting director. Randy, we're going to be filming a TV or a movie in Vegas, and the director wants realism in the part of a police officer. Would you come down and do an audition? We saw you on Cops, and I said sure. So I walk into a suite at the old Riviera Hotel, and I listen. I'm doing this on a lark, right? And this is just kind of
Right.
this will be kind of fun. And I walk in, and who's standing there but Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese, and
Wow.
it was the film Casino. So
Wow.
usually they give you some lines to read,
Yeah.
and before they could do that, I just started a conversation with them, telling them funny stories about being a cop in Vegas,
Yeah.
and they said, "Forget the lines, you got the part," and that's how I got, and that's how I began my acting career, such as it is. Got in the
Wow.
Screen Actors Guild, and have been doing movies and TV ever since.
That's
And
incredible.
also along those fateful lines, I never intended to be a writer. I think I alluded at the
Yep.
beginning of this that I spent a lot of time reading as a child, but I had a life changing experience in 1989, and I was on patrol as a sergeant, and during in the evening, and I came upon a car that was up on the sidewalk, people running around screaming, and I have no idea what the problem is, but I know it ain't good, and
Right.
and radioed for backup. And as I jumped out of the car, somebody screams, "Oh my God, the baby's been shot!" And there's bullet
Ah,
holes all over the car.
oh my
And what
God.
had happened was a young family, mom and dad from El Salvador, and a 1-month-old baby in the infant seat, were just driving down the street, and a car full of gangbangers pulled up alongside of them, and it was a gang initiation. And they just
Ah,
opened fire on the car for no reason whatsoever.
oh my God.
And one of the shots hit the baby in the face. So I get there, and I'm literally there within minutes of this happening. And the scene is bedlam. You know, there's people running around screaming. They got bullet holes in the car. I got a little baby there. I don't know if the shooter is still there. But you know, this is what you do. I radioed for the ambulance, radioed for more backup, and went down to check the baby. Now remember, she's 1 month old. Her head is the size of a softball.
Oh my God.
And I checked her and she wasn't breathing. And a bullet had hit her right in the face.
Oh my God.
So the protocol is you wait for the ambulance. But I knew that if I waited for the ambulance, this baby was going to die. So the first patrol car that got there, I scooped her up. I said, get me to the hospital. When the bullet hit her in the face, all this tissue and stuff went down into her throat and choked her. And I was able to scoop it out and give her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and bring her back.
Oh my God, dude.
And because I was there within minutes, because whatever you want to call it, fate or God or higher power, whatever it is, put me there at that particular time, there was no brain damage because, you know, I oxygenated her again, you know, before there was brain damage. Handed her off to the hospital and saved her life, and she's still in my life today. But
wow,
that moment, Ken, was so life-changing for me. It was so poignant that I went home, brought out the bottle of scotch, took out a yellow pad and a pen, and I wrote the story called Her Name Was Jackie.
Oh my God.
And didn't have anything to do with it. I just felt like I needed to write it. So I put it away in my desk, and there it sat for years until the World Trade Center was attacked in 2001. And then I felt so impotent, not being able to help those officers there. Suddenly it came to me, you know what? Every cop I know has a story like that. I'm going to ask them to write those stories. I'm going to put them in a book, and I'm going to donate all the money that we make from this to the families of those cops who were killed.
So I have a question, and we're in the segue, just so you guys know, we're in an unbelievable segue. But I have a question for you, because I told you when we talked, you know, a lot of my friends in Ohio are law enforcement officers, ranging from patrol to lieutenant. One of my best friends is a lieutenant. How do you? I sit here and I hear that story, and I think, how do you? Personally, I feel like this. Maybe I shouldn't say this publicly. I feel like if I were that in your shoes and had gone through that, I would be so pissed off that I would want to hunt them down and just, you know, that's it. Lights out for you. You don't deserve to be here. You shot a baby. You're done in this life. That's the way I feel about it. It pisses me off. How do you go from holding this little baby, saving its life, which is amazing, to going back on the streets the day later, to whenever it was, and not being really
an hour later, Ken,
an hour later, and not being so pissed off that you want to hurt people?
What makes you think I didn't?
Oh my God. Wow. Okay. There you go.
It's a very lucky thing for them that our paths did not cross.
Right. It's unbelievable to me, man, that the stuff that you go through, and you can still go out and protect and serve and live up to that. It's unbelievable to me.
Well, you know, and that's interesting you say that, because in my current life, I deal with the pain of others that are experiencing exactly what you just described.
Right.
And everybody metabolizes. I'm going to use that word, metabolizes the violence, the heartache, the cruelty that they see throughout their police careers. And some metabolize it in a healthy way, some do not. And so you have every part of the spectrum being covered, from, people that say, I'm just not, I can't do this anymore, to, people that, start indulging in, copious amounts of alcohol,
Yeah.
prescription drugs. Our suicide rate is off the hook.
Right. Yep.
What I do now is is very, probably the most important thing that I've ever done, which is try to save lives of police officers through our organization.
I've heard the stories, man. Begged a guy not to pull the trigger on a 12 gauge shotgun he had in his mouth, and the dude did it. And he had to live with, and right in 10 feet from him, and he had to live, he has to live with that for the rest of his life. And people don't understand. And Randy, I want to get this message out, I'm sure as much as you do, that you know what, cops are not necessarily superhumans. They're just humans that are trying to do a job, and they're so law enforcement officers, I think, get a bad rap, and it's sad to me that that it's gone down the way it has, especially in the last few years. So talk about the Wounded Blue and how that all came about, and the books and everything that you're doing. Tell everybody what you're doing.
Well, so I didn't intend to retire when I did, Ken. That decision was made for me. I was on patrol one night as a lieutenant, and whenever I was the watch commander, which meant I was the highest ranking person on duty and would respond to any major event, I would take a patrol officer with me, so that way I could get to know my people. Remember, the Las Vegas Police Department is the 9th largest department in the country. So, we don't all know each other, right? So I would get to learn about my folks by taking them in a patrol car with me, because you get to learn about somebody in 8 hours in a police car. Trust me. And so I had this young cop with me. It was 2:30 in the morning. We're driving down Las Vegas Boulevard right in front of the old Bally's Hotel. And I'm talking to him like I'm talking to you. And suddenly I found myself talking slower, and I had no control over it. And I realized that my brain was slowing down, that I was having a stroke. I knew exactly what was happening. So I stopped the police car and I told him, "Get me help. I'm having a stroke." And he looked at me like, "Is this the way the lieutenant screws with people?"
Wow.
And he realized, oh no, he's not playing a game. And I got out of the police car to go around the passenger side in case he needed to get me to the hospital, and started speaking gibberish. And I knew I was speaking gibberish. I had no control over it. I knew what I was trying to say, but that's not what was coming out of my mouth.
Wow.
And then I lost the ability to speak altogether. And then I lost the ability to move, and I crumpled to the pavement.
Oh my God.
Lay there helpless. And I can tell you this quite honestly, I was not afraid of dying, Ken. I was afraid of living like that.
Right.
And once again, the angel that's been on my shoulder my entire police career, because I haven't told you about some of the really scary stuff that have happened. But once again, that angel was on my shoulder, and the clot went through my brain without leaving a lot of permanent damage. And
wow.
And but here's my last on-duty memory. I'm laying there helpless on the pavement, and tourists are walking by me taking my picture, right? And the officer had called for an officer needs help, and cops, put a protective ring around me, till the ambulance could get there. And here, while I'm laying there helpless, one of my cops said to somebody, "If you don't get that camera out of his face, I'm going to take it off you and stick it up your ass."
Right.
I remember thinking, that's the Metro I know and love right there.
Right. Wow.
So, but that ended my police career. And I should mention that 3 weeks prior to that, my mother died in my arms.
Oh my God.
And 2 months before that, I was involved in another fatal shooting. And so there was a lot going on in my life when this took place. But it ended my police career. And suddenly I'm left literally with nothing but loss. I've lost my mom. I've lost my job. I've lost my identity as a cop. And I was planning for my retirement 5 years down the road. And suddenly it's just yanked out from under you.
Wow.
And then what happened next was the most shocking thing to me. And that was that my own police department turned its back on me and refused to pay my medical bills.
Oh my God.
And I was, wait a minute. You have to pay my medical bills. This is an on-duty injury and it's covered by statute. I have benefits that are part of this contract that I had with you when I put my life on the line for this city.
Every day.
And they said, yeah, well, take us to court. And I wound up having to go through almost a year of fighting them for them to pay my medical bills. The bill collectors are knocking on my door. They ruined my credit. Wow. And I came to find out, this is the most shocking thing. They knew they were going to have to pay eventually, but they also knew it would take about a year. And they were betting on the fact that I would die in the meantime.
Wow.
So that was a moment, or a time when I felt completely abandoned. I felt alone. I can tell you there was a lot of dark thoughts that went through my head.
Sure.
What was it all worth? What was my service worth?
Yeah.
And from being so noticeable in the law enforcement community, from the books and the movies, from being a trainer, right? Well, cops started reaching out to me. Randy, I know you don't know me, but I was shot in the line of duty. My chief never came to visit me in the hospital. They're not paying my medical bills. Randy, I know you don't know me, but I was hit by a car. They're not paying my medical bills. Randy, I wish I died that night. At least I wouldn't be a burden to my family. I mean, one after another after another. And I kept on saying, okay, wait a minute, hold on a second. There's got to be resources for these men and women. The depression that they're going through, the struggle, the feeling alone, and realized there was no national resource for these men and women. And so I created it. And that is the Wounded Blue. And we are the National Assistance and Support Organization for Injured and Disabled Law Enforcement Officers, a nationwide charity that's helped more than 15,000 police officers in the last 4 years.
That is so powerful, man. Wow. Okay, let me unpack this a little bit. So you went from I'm choked up, man. It's like crazy that any law enforcement officer would ever have to go through that, ever. I mean, you guys put it all on the line. And look, we can talk about this briefly, but very briefly. We all know there are some bad apples in the cart, and
of course,
and I know some of my best friends. They go home to their family men, their family women. They have kids. They have a life. They just happen to put on a uniform and a badge and a gun and go to work every day protecting other people. And then they're treated like shit as a result of it. And then to have your own department treats you that way is just mind-boggling to me.
It is mind-boggling, and it's taken place right now to this day. I could tell you story after story after story. And what we do is my entire team is made up of cops who have been shot or stabbed or beaten or run over and abandoned and alone. And together we have created this amazing organization, and they are called Peer Team Advocates. They're all trained and certified counselors. Some are in wheelchairs, some are on crutches, some are still working. But every one of these men and women is devoted to helping their brothers and sisters. And talk about service, that even if after they can't serve as a cop anymore, they serve anyway. And they're the heroes of the Wounded Blue.
Unbelievable. So talk about that. Talk about I mean, I have a lot of LEO friends that may watch this show. They will, because I'm going to send it to them. That watch this show and they're going through something like this. How do they get in touch with you? What's the next step? And let's preface it by saying this. I have a really good friend. I won't mention his name, but he's been in law enforcement a long time. And I was having a conversation. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. And I said, dude, he's like, I hate it working because of the politics. Right.
Right.
And I said, well, start your own business then. Get the hell out of it. And he's like, yeah, I've always dreamt of starting this one business, but dude, I can't do that. And I said, why? And he's like, I don't know. He's more, we unpacked it, and he's more comfortable running into a dark building at night, chasing a guy with a gun shooting at him than starting his own damn business. Like, what the hell? I don't get that, dude. That's a mental illness. You realize that, right? But like, I'm telling you, man, that's so how does somebody get in touch with you? And, how does somebody get in touch with you about this?
Well, I want to tell you about an incredible event that we have coming up in September. This is for every police officer and their spouse. This is the third annual National Law Enforcement Survival Summit. It's going to be held in Las Vegas, September 26th to the 29th. And this is unbelievable training. This is life-changing training. It's every aspect of surviving a law enforcement career, not just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, of dealing with relationships, of dealing with spirituality, of your fiscal issues. It's every aspect, with some of the most incredible speakers in the country. And this is our third annual event. It's life-saving. I can tell you this without any exaggeration at all. I've had cops tell me being at this saved their life, because they realized they weren't forgotten, they weren't alone, that there was help for them. I've gotten people into treatment as soon as they walked out of the doors. This is really important. I highly recommend that if you are a law enforcement officer, you make this happen. It's only $295. That's all it is. And your meals are paid for. There's entertainment. It's because I don't do a conference unless we have fun as well. Okay. So that's part of the deal. And, but this should be mandatory for every police officer in America. And if you are a law enforcement leader, send your cops. They'll view you as being someone who cares if you do that. And that's what's so important. So, but to find us is so easy. thewoundedblue.org. We also have a tremendous documentary film. If you go to Amazon.com, put in The Wounded Blue, it'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind. This film, The Wounded Blue.
Really?
And you can reach us on Facebook. Everything that you tell us is confidential. There'll be a peer team member that will reach out to you, and they'll be your resource for life. We're also a resource for every cop in America and every police department in America. I send teams to places that their cops are really suffering, and we'll spend time with them, helping them cope with the issues that's facing them. So thewoundedblue.org. And here's the other part, Ken. We're a charity. We don't get money from the government. We don't get grants, unfortunately. Everything is through business people that care about us and people that donate to us. So if you're a business person and you want to become a sponsor of one of our events like the Survival Summit, contact me personally, Randy at thewoundedblue.org. And that's, I mean, we really, really count on the people who care about their cops enough to donate $10 a month or whatever they can do. I can tell you that I've had some amazing people hear my story. I was on Neil Cavuto's show about a year ago, and I was telling the story about the Wounded Blue. And 20 minutes later, a guy calls me. We get in a conversation, and he sent me a check for $100,000. So
that's amazing.
I'm waiting for that next $100,000 donor to listen to me. Maybe they're listening to this show right now.
Yeah, that's amazing, dude. Somebody type that in the comments for me, his email address, randy@thewoundedblue.org, please. randy@thewoundedblue.org. Look, I think that, I mean, obviously this is what about other first responders? Thank you, Robert Brooker. What about other like firefighters? And cause they have their very similar issues as well.
Very, very much so. I can only bite off what I can bite off.
Right.
And we have actually talked about the Wounded Red, sometime when we're, more fiscally able to do it to develop that as well. But I got to tell you, I got my hands full right now, just dealing with with the people that I deal with.
Well, I think that every law enforcement officer, and I've been to, as a as a civilian, I've been to some of these law enforcement officer gatherings, and they definitely know how to have fun. So,
absolutely,
yeah. What let me ask you. This is a lot. This is a lot, and my brain is literally just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour right now. But let me ask you this: what in life in general, whether it's law enforcement or anyone, what do you think stops people from experiencing it all, from having it all, from the spirituality, joy, money, financial, everything? What do you think holds people back?
I think people are held back by their own fears. You just mentioned it, that you have a friend who'd been a cop. Cops have a lot more skills than they think they do.
Yeah.
And being the fear of it. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
The fear of venturing into the unknown is really something that holds us back. And I think that is probably, we're our own worst enemy in that regard. But it's really difficult to make that transition and say, you know what, I believe in myself. I believe that I can do it. And that's why you have to have a strong support system behind you, that and also the guidance. Yes, we are all capable, but we need mentors. We need people that have the skills, are willing to share those skills. And there's a lot of selfish people out there that don't want to do that, but there's also a lot of really, really good people that are willing to share that and support others.
Yep. Amen. I agree. Well, if you would like to support the Wounded Blue, go to thewoundedblue.org, and there's a donate button. You'll see the link going down the page. You'll see for the conference, for the 2023 National Law Enforcement Survival Summit. It's on there. It looks like I'm looking at it right now. It looks like there's a nice little video, couple videos on there as well for this. So make sure you go check it out. And look, if you can't afford a financial donation, excuse me, that came out of nowhere. If you can't afford a financial donation, share this out. That'll help. Like, you know, we all know somebody in law enforcement. So share this thing out over and over and over. Let's get as many eyeballs on this video as possible on every platform that we're on, which is every platform there is. So Jose Garza, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you, man. Jose shared it out. So listen, I'm very grateful for you, Randy. Your story is so powerful. Again, thank you for your service. It's incredible what you've done in your career, and your continued service to help other people in service. It's crazy.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, Ken, and it was great to be here. So hopefully we'll talk again soon.
We will. So stay with me if you would, Randy. Everybody watching, I'm going to end the live stream, but thank you to everyone, your comments and your shares and everything else. So thank you so much. See you all later. Thank you, Randy.